I want Conor. Islam Makhachev stuns Joe Rogan. With $100 million super fight demand. Get ready because the MMA world is buzzing like never before. We're talking about something that could reshape the entire sport. Forget ordinary title defenses or weekend prelims. This is about the biggest potential fight since McGregor burst onto the UFC scene. The name being thrown around everywhere is Islam Makhachev versus Conor McGregor. And right now it's not just theory or old fan speculation. It's becoming a legitimate discussion among fighters, analysts, and fans around the planet. That's because Conor McGregor himself has publicly pointed his sights at Makhachev's welterweight crown, reigniting one of the most talked-about rivalries in combat sports. A clash between the current pound-for-pound king and one of the biggest draws in UFC history. The buzz started when McGregor, who hasn't fought since 2021, made it clear he's not done with the sport yet. Most of the early chatter around his comeback was tied to a rumored appearance on a historically massive event at the White House for UFC's 250th anniversary celebration. An event that has the potential to be one of the biggest UFC cards ever assembled. That already had fans speculating on blockbuster matchups, but then McGregor went further. He didn't just want a comeback opponent, he named a massive target, Islam Makhachev, the reigning welterweight champion and pound-for-pound elite. That statement alone sent shockwaves through the MMA community, because this isn't just any matchup. Islam Makhachev is far from a walk-on opponent right now. Over the past couple of years, he has solidified himself as one of the most dominant champions in UFC history, first in lightweight, and then by moving up to welterweight and capturing that belt as well. In November 2025, he defeated Jack Della Maddalena to become the UFC welterweight champion and tie the UFC record with his 16-fight win streak, an accomplishment only a handful of elite fighters in MMA history can claim. That staggering number of consecutive wins isn't just a statistic, it's proof of his consistency, skill set, and evolution as a fighter at the absolute top of the sport. Makhachev's rise has been remarkable. Coming out of the famous American Kickboxing Academy, he inherited the legacy of Khabib Nurmagomedov, who himself had one of the most impactful careers in MMA history, and has expanded on it. He's developed into a complete mixed martial artist with elite grappling, suffocating top control, and evolved striking that includes notable finishes. Makhachev is not just a grappler or a wrestler or a striker. He's evolved into a hybrid threat that poses multiple dangers at once. On the other side of this imagined collision is Conor McGregor, one of the most polarizing, influential, and commercially successful fighters in MMA history. McGregor's last competitive fight was in 2021 against Dustin Poirier, where he suffered a leg injury that forced him out of action. Since then, he's remained a huge presence in the sport, both through social media and business ventures, but his fighting legacy and status as a pay-per-view king remain intact. See, McGregor's name alone has historically driven more attention and buys for fights than almost anyone else in UFC history. And that kind of commercial power can turn potential matchups into mega events. What makes this moment even more electrifying is how McGregor framed his desire to face Makhachev. Instead of simply saying, "I want to return," he specifically mentioned wanting to challenge for the UFC welterweight title and go for what he described as a triple crown, meaning winning titles in 3 weight classes, a feat no fighter has ever accomplished in UFC history. McGregor didn't couch that statement lightly. He made it publicly, naming Islam's belt as a direct target and calling the matchup a good fight, a challenge steeped both in ambition and legacy stakes. The discussions around this have grown fast because it's not just a fighter looking for any opponent. It's one of the sport's biggest names aiming at the pound-for-pound king. Now here's where the narrative really turns up the heat. Even though Makhachev hasn't come out and demanded $100 million himself in any verified interview, the concept of a $100 million payday for something like a Makhachev versus McGregor Superfight has become a real talking point across social media, MMA podcasts, reaction videos, and fan-generated content. Some fighters, fans, and insiders are openly discussing what it would take financially for UFC to make that fight happen, with speculation that a $100 million purse would be in McGregor's ballpark given his drawing ability and history of major financial pulls. That has lit up comment sections, i.e. speculation threads, and MMA circles, even though no official contract demands or numbers have been disclosed by Makhachev or his team through mainstream credible outlets. At the same time, Makhachev's actual public comments don't contradict the idea of wanting to fight McGregor. Sources indicate that he's open to facing big challenges and has acknowledged the legacy implications of fighting elite competition. There's also historical context to the matchup. Makhachev's mentor, Khabib Nurmagomedov, famously fought Conor McGregor years ago in one of the sport's most controversial and high-profile events. That history still resonates with fans, making the idea of a fight between McGregor and someone from Khabib's lineage deeply compelling for many. Analysts now are dividing MMA fans into two camps. One side sees this as one of the most marketable fights imaginable, where McGregor's return and Makhachev's current prime collide in a spectacle that could break records. McGregor's promotional power alone could force massive contracts, pay-per-view buys, and global attention, while Makhachev's dominance gives the fight competitive legitimacy. The other side sees this matchup as risky from a competitive standpoint. Makhachev is very active, very dangerous, and logically favored to win based purely on athletic peak, whereas McGregor has been out of the cage for 5 years and has age and ring rust factors to overcome. That tension, commercial versus competitive, is precisely why this hypothetical superfight dominates conversation right now. And then there's the broader context of the UFC's promotional strategy, and the organization is planning historically big events, including the White House card, and they need fights that move the needle. Makhachev versus McGregor checks every box: a superstar returning, a top active champion, historical baggage, potential legacy outcomes, and massive pay-per-view intrigue. Promoters have to balance risk, reward, and public interest. And right now, this fight, even as speculation, is eyeballing every metric you could imagine when building a major MMA event. Even if this fight doesn't materialize tomorrow, the fact that McGregor publicly named Makhachev's championship as a target, and that fans, analysts, fighters, and content creators around the sport are treating it as the potential next biggest fight in MMA, speaks volumes about how huge this discussion has become. We're at a place where this isn't fringe talk anymore. It's mainstream speculation with real legacy and financial implications. It matters. So, what does this all mean for MMA today? It means we might be on the brink of seeing one of the most consequential fights in UFC history, not because it only answers who's better in the cage, but because it answers where the sport is headed in terms of star power, financial stakes, and global relevance. A matchup between a dominant champion like Islam Makhachev and a transcendent figure like Conor McGregor wouldn't just be another title fight. It would be a super fight in every sense of the word, a moment where athletic excellence, legacy ambition, business spectacle, and fan attention converge in one event. If you want to see how this story unfolds, make sure you like the video, subscribe for constant updates as negotiations and news develop, and drop a comment with your prediction. Would Makhachev or McGregor win if this super fight actually takes place?